Right, we're going to look at making interactivity such as rollovers and mouse events in Hype. I've created a stage size for the final output I need, and I need to first of all set up my rulers so I can drag out guides to align my buttons. View menu, show rulers. Once I've got that, I'll just drag out a couple of guides at the top and the left so I can line my button up. Now, to create a button, to start off with, you can go to the Insert menu and go down to Button, or you can click on the Elements button up on the top of the Documents window and click Button. That will insert a button onto the center of the stage. We can click on that and move it up to where we want. You can also make it a little bit bigger if you wished and drag that out and pull it across here. I'll just make it a little bit bigger, and then I'll just drag out some guides to hug the edges. Obviously this is bigger than it would be in real life, but just to demonstration purposes here we've got that. Now I can change the color of the background by going up in the inspector and click on the Elements inspector, and the top portion here I can then change it and maybe make it a bit of a darker grey or a black. Number of different ways you can use colour pickers. On here the colour picker, so you can use one of your choice to select an appropriate colour. Here we're just using the hexadecimal value colour picker. Need to change the text because now our text has disappeared because it is black. So in the inspector I click on the text inspector. If I double click inside here, it'll highlight the word button there, and I can first of all make the word bigger. I can then change the color. If I click here and the color picker, I make it white. Finally, I just adjust the button to the size I want it to be, and I've just adjusted the guides for when I put any new buttons in there. Now we can amend the text, so if we double click on there, you can either type in the hoof and just put it straight on there, or you can click underneath here and it has a little text field which you can also type in if it's more comfortable to do that. So we've got a button and we need to create a rollover on it. If you see up at the top, when you've selected a button, it has normal, hover and pressed. It's on the normal now. If we now click on the hover, nothing changes, but we can now change the background. I've got the background selected there. I go to the element inspector, and at the top I click there to make sure I've selected the fill style, and I'll go down and I'll change it for a ready color. Now when I go back over here and click normal, it's got black, hover or mouse over, it's got red, and then we'll move it along and we'll press on pressed. I make sure in the elements inspector I have the fill block clicked, and then in the picker I'll just change that to another color, in this case maybe pick a blue or a purple. So what we have here is normal, hover and pressed. Preview in the browser by pressing Command and Return. If we now hover the mouse over, it rolls over. If we press, you'll see it will change color. There's other things you can do to customize your button, as in the same way as you would do any object. You can click on here and make sure you've got the element inspector. You can have a reflection at the bottom which will appear there, or you can then also have a drop shadow on there by changing the color and taking the blur up. So basically you can, customize your button as you see fit. Now once you've created a button, you need to add some interactivity on the button. Okay, I created one button. I'll create another button by just duplicating that. So I can go to Edit, Copy and Paste, or Duplicate. So I now have two buttons, so I'll just move that down. Note in the timeline it'll just have button and button, so I'm going to make sure I click on the top button there, and I'm going to call that Home button in the timeline layer for it, then click on the next one, and I'm going to call that Info. So it's Info button. And also I can rearrange them in the timeline so the Home is at the top. Now the second button here needs to be amended, so I highlight it and I put in the word Info, because that's going to be our Info button. And again, if I go through it, it will display how it will look like a normal hover and pressed. So the two components are set up. I'll preview in the browser, and both of them are working as we expect them to be working. There's going to be some interactivity here, and we'll set this up to do with scenes. So we'll have one scene and it will move to another scene, which is a good way of doing some interactivity as timeline options, sometimes in Hype, are not that sophisticated as you find in Flash. If I go up to Show Scenes up at the top, and we have our first scene here, which is called Untitled Scene. If I call this Home, so last up, I just need to drag an image on here or insert an image. So I'm going to go to the Insert button or the Insert menu and find an image, bring that in. It's appeared up there. I drag it and reposition it. And what I'll do is I'll just take the opacity of that down a bit. Okay, next up, I'll just put some text on there to just give a label of where I'm at. So I'll get the text properties up in the inspector, insert text, and I'll type in the word Home. This is just a label to make sure we know which page is which. I'll move that up here. Double click to highlight it and make the font a little bit bigger, and then move the whole box to a better location and put it on the top. I'll just move it up to the further up to the top. So this is to show what page we're on, just give us a little bit of an indication more than anything else of what page we're currently on. Now that's all set up. I will now duplicate the scene. So I go up to the top of the scene, right mouse click, and I duplicate scene. Now this is going to be called Info. I'll go up, right mouse click on the home scene, and I will duplicate scene. Once I've got that, I will change the scene label and call it Info, so I know what that is. And then I'll just amend the scene. Up at the top, I'll change the actual title on the page and call that Info, so we know which page is which. And then I'll just change the image. So I'll delete the image on there, the Insert button, Insert Image, and I'll find another image. I'll insert it on there. It's come on the top, so in the timeline I'll drag it down so it's underneath those buttons and just knock out the opacity so we're able to see that. So we've got two scenes. Here's the first scene and here's the second scene. So I'll go back to the home scene and put some interactivity on the button. I click on the home button. In the inspector, I go and click on mouse actions inspector, and I can change a number of things. I can change the cursor. I can also do a jump to scene, also do mouse down events, mouse out, and mouse over, change those different things. But we're going to do a jump to scene. So jump to scene here for the on mouse click, and then it says next scene, but we want to say home. So when we click on there, it goes home. Then you can set up a number of different things, swap, instant, crossphase. Sometimes when you click on here, you may get a warning and it'll click on and say it doesn't work in these browsers. So I set that up. I'll just do it for an instance in this case. Then I click on my info button and I do the same again. Mouse click, jump to scene. I then select info and I do it as an instance. I go over to my, I go to the second scene, the info scene, click on the home button, change jump to scene, do that to home, and again do it with an instance. Then I click on the info button and do the same. Jump to scene, next scene to info. Now you can copy and paste those buttons, so you could do buttons on one page, and if you had a number of different scenes, just paste them on there. I'll just show you how to do that. I'll just delete these two buttons here. I have two buttons set up here. You can have any number of buttons. They're all set up to links to the scenes. I can copy those and go to the next scene and paste them in, and they will retain their links. Now if we preview in browser, we're at the home page, we click on info and we can click back. So what it's contained is two different links. If I go back here, I can change maybe the how they function. So I click on the home and I change instance to swap on both of those. And then also I'll do it on the info page, just give you an idea of how they can work. Preview in the browser, click here and click there. Okay, and click here.